Hey, it's Bruce Rosard here. I'm one of the co-founders of Arrival, and great to be in season 4 of Experience This. Lots of good stuff coming up soon, and we have a great show here with one of the many operators out there now that are now really discovering how to use AI rapid fire. And Jack Harris from Tally Ho has jumped on and just really super impressive with what you're talking about now pretty much every day. It's like a fire hose, isn't it, Jack? So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and Tally Ho, for a minute and jump into your great AI discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for having me on. My name is Jack Harris. I am the founder of Tally Ho Experiences. We are a London-based tour operator specializing in quintessentially British experiences, predominantly using British bicycles. They are classically made bikes by a company called Pashley. Our guides are tweed capped. It's all rather fun. I started the company all by myself 15 years ago now. I was one of those guys who basically dipped my toe into tourism and caught a bug for it. But initially I was guiding all the tours myself. I was essentially pulling pints at night in a pub, paying the bills, and then sort of picking up tourists wherever I could, trying to poach them off of hop-on, hop-off buses to see if I could show them the real London. Anyway, it did catch on. By, I think it was 2014, we hit the #1 spot on TripAdvisor for outdoor activities. I then managed to hire more staff, and it started to snowball. Today we do around sort of 10,000 packs per annum, just shy of. But interestingly, most importantly, it's like over a 4-month window. So it's really kind of like intense operationally, and then planning around the shoulder season as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a real sort of pleasure to see the team grow and just see the brand develop and how it's been lapped up around the world.
You know, even as a hop-on, hop-off operator, Jack, when people visit and ask how to see San Francisco, I tell them to rent a bike and ride across the Golden Gate Bridge on a bike. At one point, maybe it's still true, I'm not sure, but San Francisco was the biggest bike rental market in the world. I think now 4,000 to 5,000 bikes. On a busy day, all 5,000 bikes will be rented. Wow. 90% probably going across the GoldenAte Bridge, coming back on the ferry.
But how do you run bike tours in a city like London where it rains every day?
Yeah, good question. It doesn't rain every day. It might in Manchester, but not in London. Yeah, it's really it can be a challenge, but it doesn't rain as much as people think. In terms of like our season, we're very much kind of like April, May, June, July, August, so it's not too bad even if there is kind of a light shower. We give people ponchos. We have options, really flexible options to be able to reschedule, etc. So it's the weather, I'll be honest, is always a challenge. We've just built like an operating procedures around it, how we take the edge off things before people get there, let them know the options, and also our guides are just super brilliant at what they do. If there's a dark cloud on the horizon, it becomes a stiff upper lip opportunity, which really adds to the experience.
I remember years ago hill tribe hiking in Thailand, and we were about to leave, and someone said, "What are we going to do if it rains?" And the guide said, "We're not going to be scared of droplets of water coming from the sky. It's okay. We'll get through it."
Exactly. There's no wicked wit for the West here. You're not going to melt.
Yeah.
And I imagine in London, there's always a pub around the corner you can duck into if it's really a shower.
That is the other thing. I mean, part of the reason, or part of the initial vibe when I was starting up the company, I wanted to take people to my favorite pubs around the city. And I thought we could do the sites along the way, but the pubs were actually the main focus. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's always time for an extra cheeky half if the rain is heavy outside before rolling on. And Dutch courage works. That's all I can say.
Excellent. So let's talk about the recent stuff. I'm in Manchester at UK Inbound, which is my first UK Inbound. It's been very good. And I did a thing yesterday. So what I did a setup, and I went on stage and said, "Okay, everyone pick a city in England." I gave them choices. They picked London, which was irritating because they were supposed to pick Newcastle, but they picked London. And I said, "Pick a theme: bus, bike, or walking." And I hoped they were going to pick bus, but they picked walking. And then I went and sat down and I had 40 minutes to vibe code the site. It was actually pretty good. It was a bit like the thing we did at Arrival, Bruce, over 3 hours, but I think I produced about twice as much as that in 40 minutes. And that's how far the tech's come, right, in the last couple of months. The Wi-Fi was terrible. I had to deploy it on the stage while I was doing my presentation, which was irritating, but we got to have a look at the site. So I was saying to the people yesterday, this thing's jumped up in the last 2 months. We're at a new phase now. Started with Claude Code, I think, in probably November, December. And yeah, I've been in a couple of events here, and there's just a real buzz around people that are using, especially Claude. I don't know, you're one of those people, Jack. So how's your experience been?
Yeah, this year feels like we're taking off on a rocket ship in terms of potential of everything. For a bit of context, I did a software engineering boot camp in 2019 just to be able to have better conversations with developers. I never wanted to be a developer myself. And I was quite early into using like ChatGPT and stuff like that, but it never felt like it really was going very far. The context windows and things like that, having to restart, refresh, etc. And then, yeah, I completely agree with the rollout of Claude Code, and certainly more recently Opus 4.6. The model, the possibilities are just absolutely incredible. And I feel like what was previously a challenge to build out tools and integrations where you had to either hire a developer or splice things together using Zapier or something like that, all of a sudden you can build something a lot more sophisticated using Claude Code and deploy it pretty much free of charge or at minimal cost to a whole load of modern stacks. And so yeah, obviously the barrier is no longer the software; it's more the articulation of the right idea. And for me, another little bit of piece of the jigsaw was I actually made myself fully remote from Tally Ho 3 years ago, just before my first son was born. So we now live just south of Bath in the countryside. And as a result of that, me and my team, we went through a process of actually fully building out SOPs around all layers of the business. So it no longer lived in my head. It's now in SOPs. And what that means now, today, between Claude Code and those SOPs, we're able to really make rapid progress, hooking things together, automating bits and pieces. And OpenClaw itself is something I'm experimenting with at the moment. That is just next level, even beyond Claude Code, because now Claude Code runs on my OpenClaw. So yeah, super exciting time. It's almost sometimes like you're not too sure what to do next, because it's just like being a kid in a candy store. But yeah, I mean, ultimately the experience of what it's all about is all about the guest experience in destination. So it's like, how do we not lose focus of that? The experience is the most important thing. But in terms of like customer expectations, dealing with our travel trade partners, email responses, even guide training, there isn't a single part of the business now which doesn't have AI directly embedded into the core of it. And I don't just mean like bolting on like a chatbot on a website. I mean like AI at the very core is doing like the email replies, building out bespoke PDFs on the fly for travel agents who are inquiring about our products, building out coaching opportunities for our guides based upon the WhatsApp conversations. It's pretty awesome. I'm starting to think like the value of the company is no longer a load of bikes sitting in London. It's actually sitting on my desk right here.
It's funny you mentioned standard operating procedures, and I used to read a lot of business books. And everyone always asks, what was your favorite and stuff. And I go back to the E-Myth, which is like an old, it's like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a really small book, right? Thin book. But the whole point of it was, it sounds like you've read it, Jack. I'm not sure if you have, Bruce, but the whole point of the E-Myth was that run your business like you're about to sell it. Run it so that a bunch of monkeys could arrive in the morning at 9 o'clock, open the door, and there's an operating procedure for everything. Turn the key to the left, open up the cash register, which was always a good practice, right? So that it's scalable, but it's actually more important now because you point the AI at all of those docs, and now it can run the business. Because that's context.
And even more than that, because it has insight into the actual whatever's going on in your emails or on your WhatsApp or whatever, it has context about how those SOPs can also be improved and iterated upon. Obviously, you still want to have human in the loop at some point, but the SOPs are never collecting dust, and they never. We used to sort of check them once a year, or check them when we onboarded someone new, bring them up to date. But now, the idea is that they're never static. That the AI is making a recommendation once a month or whenever it is. Hey, based upon these operating patterns, this is something we should implement, or this could be scratched, etc.
I'm going to chime in here as someone who is not as engaged as either of you in using Claude, doing vibe coding, diving head in like you guys both have, and most operators of tours, activities, and attractions have not. So how do we take this and give them something to really think about and work on? I want to share a screen from a post last week that you did, Jack, where you really went into this. Hopefully this is visible for you all. Does this look okay to you? So to the audience, and explain.
No, it doesn't look okay.
It doesn't because you don't like what it says, or what?
No, because people have it on the podcast and they don't have a view of the screen.
This is for the vodcast. Then watch this on YouTube. We'll share that link. And if not, Jack will do such a good job of explaining it that verbally, if you are listening to the podcast, walking your dog like I typically do, then you'll still get it. The idea here, Jack can describe it, I'm sure. But the point is, let's get away from the technical side, but go into the business side of what can this stuff do for the business, and what does someone really need to think about from that perspective?
Yeah, sure. So on screen right now is basically a kind of a financial tool that I put together to essentially pull in different data streams from the business, which on their own, give some kind of context, but as a whole, it's hard to see where we are. And I've always relied on, accountants and assistants give me numbers and things like that. And last week I just decided, I'm actually going to spend an afternoon and build out my own dashboard. Things like Xero, Stripe, etc., all have very well documented APIs. Essentially, just went through, created, pulled together the API documentation in Claude code, send Claude off, it goes and understands it. You create the authentications, and essentially pull all of that data into one place. But the important part is the layer that sits in the middle between the actual raw data and the dashboard. And that is obviously the interpretation, which is kind of in my head, which had to get, I had to get out into documentation for the system to be able to essentially present it in a way that makes sense. And basically what that means is, intercompany relationships, add backs, what certain expenses relate to where, etc. We've moved ticketing systems more times than I'd like to admit. And obviously each time you've got data that's ported from one to the other. So small things like that, where a system like Claude doesn't know immediately what's going on with all that. But once you give it that story, and it literally is a story. So if you could describe it like I'm describing to you now, you could build this yourself. You give it your sort of financial story, the relationships between the different entities, the different cash flows, etc. Put that into a markdown document. And markdown is basically just a text format as the middle layer. And then using an Anthropic API call, so like Anthropic being the company behind Claude, using the raw data and producing intelligence from it to then build out a dashboard to say, hey, this is kind of how we're doing based upon all these different metrics, and produce, whatever it is I need. So it's for me, that was kind of like quite a revelation to basically pull all these data sources into one place, give it the context of how it all relates to each other. And then now I have my own dashboard. So whenever I want to go in, the data is always live. The only thing I have to do manually is actually drop an Amex PDF statement once a month into the same folder. Claude scrapes that particular PDF, understands the context of the expenses, what's personal, what's business, and updates everything. So I'm no longer having to wait for an accountant or a bookkeeper to give me up-to-date financial data across 7 different platforms.
Here's the weird stage we're at, right? Is that, and I had a couple of good chats this week. I was in Edinburgh at the Edinburgh University, the Future Institute.
Yeah. Joshua Ryan Saha runs, right? Yeah.
Joshua, yeah. I was talking to Craig from Hollybob there, and he's all into Claude as well, and he's gone deep into it. And we were just talking about it's about working out what not to build right now is one point.
Yep.
Funny story on the side is I decided to create an OTA a couple of weeks ago. So I booked an OTA, I built an OTA, and I booked my first hotel last week, which was out this week, and I booked this week. I booked it on the wrong date. I booked it March instead of February because 28 days, it's the same number and whatever. So I went back to check the booking and I thought I need to cancel this. And it says it's not cancelable. So I'm thinking, okay, I need to get hold of customer service. I clicked on the customer service and it says Christian@magpie.travel. I'm thinking, okay, who do I shout at?
You're the customer service agent?
I'm not, it's my OTA. There's nobody else to shout at. So I might have to charge it back and see what happens. But one more point is, and we just talked about this as well, is with all that stuff you were just saying, Jack, is potentially in a month, you don't have to build any of it, right? You say to Claude or whatever, it could be ChatGPT or Gemini next, create a dashboard. And it knows where your stuff is, and it will just create a dashboard. I'm not sure if we'll be exactly there, but this stuff's going to happen, right? Where there won't be any Claude code or anything in the middle. It'll just be, do this for me.
Yeah, I think we are kind of almost there. You've got systems like Replit and Lovable, which can simplify these sorts of things, and you can spin out a to-do list or something like that quite easily. With Claude Code, I think if you want something that's a bit more nuanced, you still have to give it quite a lot of specifics and spec to ensure that it's actually you're getting the output that you want. I think throughout this process, one thing I've learned is that there's a lot of nuance and assumption inside the head, in terms of what we think we want. And it's not until you actually tease it out with a machine and go back and forward with a load of questions that you actually map out what it is you kind of have an idea, but there's a whole lot of bias in between and a whole lot of things that need to be worked out. In terms of like multiple products and what not to build, this is kind of something I'm finding really this week. I've got a few projects I haven't completed on Claude now, and I'm kind of getting distracted every day with more and more things that I could be building. And I just decided today, okay, well, today's the day I'm going to give my OpenClaw access to a couple of my Git repositories and Claude Code. So it now becomes my developer. It can do the grunt work, but importantly, because it also has context into my emails on a read-only basis, I might add, calendar, my CRM, and my soon-to-be my ticketing system as well, because we've just got the API there. It has business context, so everything it's building, it understands kind of where we're going. And with the way its memory is designed, short-term, long-term, etc., you're getting output that feels less and less generic the more context it knows about how I operate and what we're actually building.
So I'm sorry, let's take one step back. OpenClaw. Not everyone out there knows what that is, including myself. So can you give us what OpenClaw is, how it different? Is it part of Claude? Just give us a quick description.
Yeah, the guy who
I saw a picture of you carrying a new computer for OpenClaw or whatever that was.
Yeah, the reason for that is you could consider it like an exotic pet. Really interesting, nice most of the time, but could go horribly wrong at any time. So the guy who started OpenClaw, Peter Steinberger, basically built it as a kind of hobby project. He wanted a personal AI assistant that would do his bidding to some extent. It isn't it leverages other AIs. APIs, so you could have it running on an Anthropic API or an OpenAI API, but essentially what it does is have a lot of permissions out of the box. So it's very powerful, and because it's very powerful, it's also quite dangerous. Most of my time in the initial setup was essentially lobotomizing it as best I could, and then progressively opening up permissions, granting it access to certain things, testing to see how it responded, to make sure that everything was locked down and secure. Because at the end of the day, reputation is everything, and I don't want this sending an email to a customer or a client and burning a relationship. So for me, human in the loop is still like, it will always be the way. It's like massively important to have that. But in terms of its capacity, it basically keeps, you can have it continually to operate. So you should be thinking of this like your own personal droid. If any Star Wars fans out there, that's basically what OpenClaw is. It runs on another model's intelligence, so Opus 4.6 predominantly, but essentially it will go and do and learn. So it has memory. You can obviously build it in various different ways. And with that memory, over time, you're building context. You can give it any tool you can think of. There are options to chat through Slack, WhatsApp, Telegram, multiple different ways. So the interface is very intuitive. It's more like talking to a member of staff than it is talking to Claude Code.
Christian, what can you add to that description, or did Jack nail it?
No, that's it. This is what people talked about at the start of ChatGPT, right? Everyone's probably forgotten now, but it was what was it called? Auto GPT,
right,
which kind of worked, but it just wasn't there yet.
Mm.
And that's when I got excited first about agents, right? I used to harp on about agents, Bruce, because of their stuff. And now finally it's happening and they work. Definitely not perfect yet, but they work. So this is, you give it a job and you tell it this is what you do now, and it does it in a few minutes, but it can like work all day and respond to stuff that comes in and go and research things that come in. It's like having a human, but
can I buy a license to OpenClaw like for $20 a month, like ChatGPT?
You do better than that. You can download it completely for free.
What's the URL to do that?
I mean, I wouldn't, but and this is the point of having dedicated hardware, because it basically has some very dangerous access to your.
So you would not download it for free. That's why you got yourself a separate computer just for OpenClaw.
Yeah, so it's a separate piece of hardware dedicated for running OpenClaw that's locked down, particularly on my Wi-Fi network in terms of ports coming in. So only I can access it even remotely. It's basically not exposed, because that's really the biggest thing. If anyone's out there listening to this and thinks they're going to run out and or go and download OpenClaw, I mean, it's the most awesome thing going at the moment. But you've got to really understand the risk and the security implications. If you've got customer data on your computer, personal data, just don't. Make sure it's completely siloed and do it strategically, because there are plenty of crazy stories out there on the internet about LLMs blackmailing executives when they claim to shut them down, etc. And I think we'll hear more and more about that as these models get more sophisticated. But essentially, do this in a way which is kind of like playing with fire is probably the wrong word, but like it is essentially it's a tool, and it's very powerful, and it's got to be set up and maintained properly. So do it in stages. But yeah, dedicated hardware. Make sure everything's locked down. Make sure you're not giving it like root access to your primary machine. Not read write, just read only for most of what it needs to do. But yeah, the context in terms of like, for an example, today we had a corporate event inquiry. The email came in. I just said to my OpenClaw instance on Slack, hey, go check the dates on this email, reply to the agent. And it saw the email, understood the context, went to our CRM, went to our Google Calendar, understood that what they were requesting was possible because there were no other bookings on that particular afternoon, drafted a reply to her, attached the public liability insurance from our Google Drive because she requested that, built a draft in Gmail, notified me on Slack that it was ready. I checked it and sent it. And all of that took, as Christian said, like 45 seconds maybe. Now it could send it, but I'm not there yet, and I don't.
No, you're not going to do that yet. You just scared the hell out of me.
This is like this is like a super easy use case type thing. This is just plumbing basically. But obviously, the more it learns about the business, the more its context evolves.
Yeah. So here's where we are, right? And I've had a lot of these conversations this week as well on this subject, that very few people are using this stuff still. And this reminds me of when ChatGPT came out. A week later, I couldn't understand why anybody was thinking about anything else, because I just thought this is the only thing that matters right now. And I think it's almost the same now. But a lot of people are not touching it, not using it, not trying it. Not OpenClaw, but just Claude Code or Claude Cowork. Cowork especially, it's very accessible for anyone. So there's that is I'm thinking about. The other thing is I'm helping with Arrival for Valencia, right? Put together some AI forum stuff. And I know you are going to help with that as well, Jack. And I'm trying to help put the subject matter together. And it's hard because Arrival's, what are we, 2 months away, Bruce?
5
2 months
weeks.
exactly.
Oh, 2 months. Yeah, 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready to commit to what we're going to be doing because I know in 2 months so much will be different. And it's just accelerating, right? And we as humans we're just gonna have to get used to this. We're gonna have to get used to not being able to see more than a few weeks ahead. We're gonna have to be able to get used to the fact that whatever we were doing last week was probably a waste of time because now I've got this other tool that can do that much more efficiently. And that's a weird place. That used to happen in maybe 5-year increments, right? I used to do my bookkeeping this way, and I had to do this thing in Excel and then import it, and then 5 years later, but this is happening every few weeks or months.
Yeah,
and I wonder how that's going to make us feel.
Yeah, I mean, Perplexity just released Perplexity Computer, kind of its own version, possibly of OpenClaw. They're not quite as aggressive on the permissions side, and obviously OpenAI just hired the founder of OpenClaw. So I think what was initially quite fringe a few months ago is going to be rolled out into commercial products very soon. As you say, like the pace of innovation is now insane because the LLMs are writing the LLMs, and this is also where like I was super keen just to hand off the actual vibe coding element. I've been playing with vibe coding now for a month or so, and it's like, actually, no, it's time for OpenClaw to sort of run with that, or at least do some experiments where I'm sort of doing less of that and more the spec designing and the concept rather than the actual build out. But yeah, the pace of changes is kind of super exciting. It feels like a tidal wave, genuinely. Like I'm on my surfboard and paddling like crazy, just trying to keep up with it. But it's the most fun I've had in like years. I'm literally up to like 2 or 3 a.m. most nights just tinkering.
It reminds me of 1994 when www came out for the first time, and it wasn't as fast, but at the time it was, right? We just thought, holy shit, that's just, what is this thing, right? I was on Mosaic as the browser, and it was all brand new, but it progressed a lot slower. The question I have, Jack, you're the owner of the company, you run the company. Same with you, Christian, although you're a unique character in terms of which company. Is it your hop on, hop off bus company, which kind of runs itself at this point with Jessica helping you, Magpie, separate company, but every day you're thinking about the transition that's happening so fast with AI and vibe coding, et cetera. But more so for you, Jack, when is it a time where you're going to need to outsource someone else in your company, not outsource to a third party, but a lot of people listening, I think, to a third party to do this vibe coding, Claude coding, what happens tomorrow coding, because you don't need an engineer, but you still need someone who can do what you guys do, because you got to run a company, you got to run a business. And right now, because you love it, you're so excited about it, you're spending all your time about it. But are there pieces of your business that you should also be looking at? You know what I mean? Like I'm wondering when companies, SMEs, are going to need to hire a vibe coder, if you will, or maybe there's a better word for it.
Yeah, I think to some extent it will greatly depend upon how much of their systems and operating procedures are actually documented and how good that documentation is. Because at the end of the day, the value comes from deep domain knowledge. Vibe coding as a skill is actually
only go as far as the domain knowledge, right?
Yeah. Vibe coding as a skill is basically paint by numbers. It's not hard. It's really hashing out the problem, understanding how the data flows, and then building a solution that elegantly helps with that without creating technical debt further down the line. Like you don't want to be maintaining this constantly. But I also think the systems are getting advanced enough whereby, you know, we already see self-healing and Claude working out problems it discovers in the terminal as it's going through a spec. So at some point, you know, you'll have little agents running around your code base, patching things, improving things all of the time. So I don't think, you know, that's really going to be an issue. Yeah, I think you know, SME looking at this, it's very tempting to think, you know, you just get someone in and do it. But I think, you know, you start with the documenting what you know and what you're trying to achieve. Like, pick a pain point, like one process. What are we spending a lot of time on? Let's map it out. Let's map out, you know, how everything connects. And then let's just build it into a spec and see, you know, if you want to hand it over to someone who kind of, you know, plays with these tools all the time, great. But you're going to spend a lot of time on Zoom calls with a developer if you think you're going to hand over completely your vibe coded project, because really it comes down to the nuance of understanding the business. At least, you know, that's what I'm seeing in kind of what I'm building. You know, it's not just a question of connecting a CRM to a, you know, a booking system. There's a lot of interpretation that happens because of the particularly nuanced way in which I want to do business and the way I want to communicate with my customers or price things, etc. So that's the sort of small detail which it's almost like every little OpenClaw or Claude project is its own little personality, and it's an extension of the business or extension of the owner. You know, it's not like a generic software layer anymore. You can make it hyper personal, and it should be. That's what these tools are about. The actual coding side of things is completely collapsed. The barrier to entry is no longer the code. It's just articulation.
I still don't think it's for everyone today, though. I think it's hard when you're doing this all day to jump into GitHub and do a little thing. But for 99% of people, GitHub is just scary, right? It's what even is GitHub? And then to have to connect that to Vercel or whatever, that's a lot for some people. It's actually not if you just stop and let it tell you here, click that, which it will do. But it's still intimidating, I think. And then, but my point is, yeah, that's still a little bit of technical work for most people. So you could hire someone just to do that, to get it all connected in the first place, and find your APIs and that sort of stuff. But that'll disappear as well soon, right? When OpenAI, I'm not sure what OpenAI are doing right now. Are they sleeping? I'm not sure what Google are doing. But when they release these same tools, that will become more accessible as well to more people.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, Claude's not going to be the leader forever, right? When you have all these other LMs with a lot of cash and hiring people from each other, all of a sudden Claude's the hot ticket today. Who's the next hot ticket? I don't think we know yet, right?
Yeah. And to some extent, it doesn't really matter. I think as long as you kind of understand the underlying frameworks on like how these things work and the kind of limitations and the, you know, the strengths and weaknesses, even like experimenting between OpenAI's Codex or, you know, anti-gravity or Claude Code, they're all slightly different expressions of, you know, similar things, but they have different flavors. But essentially, you're working with prompts, with context, and, you know, with markdown files. It's it's like pick a flavor, learn it, but don't get wedded to it because it is going to change.
So, but the chart.
I don't.
Go ahead.
I don't think people even know what markdown wasn't a common word. I don't think people know what markdown files are. But like I said earlier, Jack, it's a text file. It's a document that explains in plain English what you are and what you're building. It's a document that anybody listening could look at and just read like a normal human. It explains your business. It depends what you're trying to do, but it's a plain English document that says very clearly.
If you've been using Notion or something like that, you will have been exposed to Markdown, you know, in terms of the text formatting. Yeah, it's text formatter.
But on that diagram that we looked at earlier, where you combined 7 or so different applications to get to your intelligence unit, talked about each of those 7 elements probably had an API. How do you put the API together? Like, I would have no idea how to connect 7 APIs into one business intelligence unit to do what you did.
Well, I've got a confession, Bruce. Nor do I, but Claude does. And so I don't.
You tell Claude, connect my CRM. Here's the API. You know, it knows how to find the API into my business unit, and it'll just do it.
Yeah. So going back to that Markdown document, it's like, okay, well, I've got let's call like 0 Stripe handful others. There's a URL on Stripe with all its documentation there, right? So I tell in my Markdown document, I just say, look, we're using Stripe. Here's the URL for the docs, and go and learn and research all these different APIs and the capabilities, their endpoints, and map out a plan so that we can basically bring them all together, and then from the raw data output, then combined with the context document, again in Markdown, which is the relationships and the nuance of my business and the systems, we're then sending all of that over to Anthropic's API for interpretation. So, and then from that, when it comes back, building out a dashboard. So you're kind of merging insight with the raw data in a dashboard. So in terms of what do you need to know, this is like, you don't need to fully understand the documentation that's contained within the API docs on a particular web page. If a service or a company has a docs page, that's good enough. You can go and tell Claude to basically find what it needs to be able to build whatever you're trying to build. What you will need to do is kind of get familiar with navigating settings and developer or API dashboards to create an API key. And probably more fundamental to this is understanding the security risks of exposing your API keys, if you're pushing to GitHub or whatever it might be. So making sure that you're correctly handling that data in secure files that never get exposed, even in the chat between Claude or ChatGPT. You never want to be pasting in your personal API keys. So a few different things: security, and then just like kind of having the mental model of kind of knowing what I'm looking at, knowing kind of what questions to ask. Because that's the other thing. This is the other, like not quite knowing what you don't know, but kind of knowing where you want to get. And you can tease this out in a chat window with Claude or with ChatGPT, whilst also building in another window at the same time. So most of the time when I'm building now, I'll have sort of 6 or so different tabs open, and there's my sort of builder, the actual bot running the code, and constantly context switching. It's almost like being a conductor, or the actual technical side of APIs and how they're constructed is not really, you don't need to know anything about that.
If you say so, because I'm hearing like API keys, and you don't want to expose your Stripe data, for example, at all. So you totally need to protect that, but you still need to give Claude your password login for your API keys so that all of your transactions get put into this intelligence unit that you're building.
I think as Christian says, this is not something you're going to run out and do tomorrow if you've never done anything like this before. You can start small, like building a link tree imitation, or building like an internal to-do list and things, and understanding, maybe start with your Google Calendar API rather than your financial data. So start small and focus on one little problem first, one little workflow, before you start trying to connect multiple different data streams and multiple different tools.
And the big difference now is we have somebody to ask, right? That's what makes this possible. Yeah. The fact is, if you really just don't get what an API key is, you just say, you can't ask a developer what an API key is, because he's going to make you feel like an idiot, and he's going to give you a hard time and sigh and groan and tell you to get out. But with any chatbot, you could say, I don't know what an API key is. Tell me what it is. Tell me where to find it. Maybe it'll say you don't need to know. Just go and find it. But you just ask it. Where do I put it? Should I paste it in here or not? And it'll say, no, don't paste it in here. Put it over here. It'll just tell you. That's the wonderful thing with these things. It's there to help.
Amazing. So we're pretty much out of time.
Yeah.
This can be continued forever. It'll be continued certainly at Arrival in Valencia, when Jack's on a couple different sessions. Christian is managing content there. And like you said, Christian, it's hard because April 27 to 29, who knows what will be happening compared to what's even happening today, right?
Yeah, so we're just to talk about Arrival a little bit, give you a plug, Bruce. So we're going to have quite a few sessions in Valencia, right? We're going to do like an intro to AI, which is for people that haven't touched it, haven't even logged in. Potentially,
I think you're going to take haven't touched it up to a little.
Yeah. fair enough. Yeah, because I think everyone's tried it. That's much shorter now. There's going to be an intermediary AI, which will probably touch on vibe coding a little bit. And then we're going to have these labs, these kind of breakouts. And that's where we'll see where we are at the time. But I'm sure there'll be a few of those will be focused on Claude Code or something similar. And I think maybe in a month we should look at it and see if we need to add or change one of the sessions or do something just on vibe coding. I'm not sure. But
right.
I'd say it's hard.
Your intermediate session might need that with you and Ollie. And Brendan Bliss from Propellic is doing one on SEO, search, and discoverability. And everything is changing on that. Plus, of course, the great debate of who's going to win in search and discoverability, direct bookings or third party. And Jack, you talked about that recently. I see you're in my algorithm now every day, which I love.
I'm pleased to hear you're stalking me, Bruce. That's nice to know.
Yeah, I am. And you said something about that, and that it could go either way in terms of search, right? OTA versus direct, which we have a debate about that. Right now, you're not on it because, like, how many sessions can you be on? But you could chat.
I'm happy to do anything and everything. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think. I mean, the thing is, you gotta place bets both ways, right? So I'm doing both. build for a significant uptick in direct, whilst at the same time not burning your bridges with the OTAs.
Right. Well, that's what your post was talking about, right? What you're doing is structuring your data for the LLMs.
Yeah.
Whether it comes through via Tor Get Your Guide or whether it comes right to you, that's who knows.
Yeah.
That's a great perspective. Yeah.
I'm kind of taking the complete nuclear option on our old kind of website and structure and just completely starting again, which, right before the summer season is daft. I swore I never would do it again, but, just things have changed so much in the last month. I just think we can't afford not to, lay the infrastructure now for what's coming next. So yeah, super exciting.
Cool.
Yeah, we're turning off WordPress this week. No more WordPress.
I don't understand what you're talking about there. We'll have to talk about that. Just turning it off, changing your website, whatever. We're not going to talk about that now. Maybe that's a whole nother episode. Do you have lightning round, or should we?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
The lightning round. You need to give us 3 best countries you've been. You decide the definition of best, and then 3 countries you haven't been to that you want to go to. Wow.
Okay. So best countries I've been to. Nepal, absolutely fabulous. The Himalayas, you think big mountains until you step out, and see the Himalayas. Corsica, I mean, I know it's French, but the Corsicans would disagree. Probably one of the most beautiful islands in Europe. I've hiked the GR20, I've sailed around it, I've motorcycled around it. I would retire there. It's gorgeous. And then Egypt, I mean, I know it's not, it's on a lot of people's bucket list, but wow, the deep history there, the engineering, the architecture, absolutely, for me was a childhood dream to go to Egypt, and I loved it. Places I would like to go, Bhutan. Love to go and see the temples in Bhutan. I also have never been to South America, so I'm kind of looking for an excuse to go there at some point. Perhaps an Arrival conference would be great.
South America is not really a country, but okay.
I know, but broadly speaking, anywhere. I've been to the US and whatnot, but and then also Iceland. I'm a big fan of kind of glaciers and hot springs and things like that, and food as well. And I've just had friends who've come back and raved about Iceland. So.
Travis Pittman from Tor Radar?
No, I don't.
He's founder CEO. Check out his feed. He's introducing a whole new thing of kind of creator-led multi-day tours, and he's doing the first one, and it's in Iceland. So
next week.
He's awesome. He's awesome. Oh, is it next week already? So
a little bit too short.
No, he's going to ITB. So
I think he leaves the day after. I looked at going, but I think it was the day after or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I find really fat. I mean, I did just a really quick stopover in Iceland, and it needs more than that.
Yeah.
Iceland Air offers a free stopover on flights from the US. but it's like halfway between the US and Europe. So we need to do an arrival Iceland.
Yeah, you can definitely put me down for that one then.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at the hard stop. Thank you so much, Jack. This was awesome.
Thank you so
Looking
much
forward
for
to seeing
having me
you
on.
in Valencia and continuing the discussion.
Looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
thanks, Jack.
Cheers.
Good stuff,
Thank you.
guys. See you guys
All
soon.
right.